BookTube! Chelsea the Reading Outlaw here to do another one of the BooktubeSFF Babbles. This week the topic is favorite fantasy. I'm very excited about this topic. I prefer fantasy to sci-fi, although the sci-fi I love, I tend to love super hard, but there are videos coming up for that. So right now we're talking about fantasy. I just want to say at the beginning, kind of give like a caveat disclaimer that this video will not talk about like the huge titles. So there will be no Lord of the Rings, there will be no Harry Potters, none of that. There are a couple titles that are definitely popular and pretty well known that I think deserve the recommendation anyway. But just because I'm not recommending Harry Potter doesn't mean I don't think Harry Potter's bloody fantastic. I just wanted to, I think we can all agree on that topic, so I wanted to give a little love to some other titles. So, first one on the list is a book that I love, that I spent like a year of my life obsessed with when I was in college. I read every book that this author wrote after reading this one. It's very odd. It's very dirty. It's very vulgar. But the fantasy, the time travel, the magic, it's all very intricate and the writing is gorgeous. It is Jitterbug Perfume by Tom Robbins. Tom Robbins also wrote Invalids Home from Hot Climates, and there's another one. But I'm going to read you the back because the back is what sold me when I first picked it up. It said, Jitterbug Perfume is an epic, which is to say it begins in the forests of ancient Bohemia and doesn't conclude until 9 o'clock tonight, Paris time. It is a saga as well. A saga must have a hero, and the hero of this one is a janitor with a missing bottle. The bottle is blue, very old, and embossed with the image of a goat-horned god. If the liquid in the bottle actually is the secret essence of the universe, as some folks seem to think, it had better be discovered soon because it is leaking and there is only a drop or two left. So I would definitely recommend picking this one up if you like books that are odd, if you like books that play with words and double entendre and their sentence structure and time. I love this book. I am actually holding it in my hands is making me want to reread it, so I probably will need to put it down soon, but I am just like, this book has so many quotes in it that I have underlined throughout the years that it's just like absolutely ridiculous. Next up, I am recommending like many things all at once because I just adore this author, and that is pretty much anything Ray Bradbury wrote. This is my Barnes & Noble leather bound edition bind up. This one has The Martian Chronicles, The Illustrated Man, and The Golden Apples of the Sun. My favorite of the three is The Illustrated Man. I just really like the construct, like the framework of the tale with each of the tattoos being one of the different stories. It also contains, I think, one of the most terrifying short stories I've ever read, which is called Kaleidoscope, which is about a group of men in a rocket ship who, like, the rocket ship explodes. Basically, like a huge chunk gets taken out of it and they all get sucked out into space. And it's just like them narrating their thoughts as they drift off into the forever black nothingness of space. And even talking about it creeps me out. So I'm just saying. But yeah, anything Ray Bradbury writes. Ray Bradbury has this way of evoking nostalgia that you didn't know that you had for a time that you weren't around for, and he does it while weaving in science fiction and fantasy and horror and magical realism and all of these things. He's one of my favorite authors of all time, and I could not more highly recommend any one of his books. Next up, we have a big one. This one's a big one, guys. It's a chunker. We have The Stand by Stephen King. This is the uncut edition, basically like the definitive version that Stephen King like released after the first version of The Stand. It is huge. It is like 1,700 pages. No, that was way off. I was so sorry, guys. That's way off. It's like 1,100 pages, or at least this one is. But it is the ultimate tale of good and evil. There are like fortune tellers and dreams and weird magical realism-y type things that are going on in The Stand, and possible monsters and maybe the devil. It is so good. My favorite thing about The Stand is kind of like a meta text thing, and it is that all of Stephen King's works kind of share this interconnectedness, and so many of them pop up in The Stand that to me it's kind of almost like like that lodestone, like that center focal point, like to which all the streams kind of lead. And so you can recognize so many characters and settings and situations in this book. It's also fun to read this book and then read other Stephen King works to see what pops up and kind of like maybe like what you then recognize. You're like, oh yeah, I remember that from The Stand. So I really, really enjoyed this one. It is definitely a commitment, but if you like King or if you like horror, dark, twisty fantasy type stuff, this is definitely one to check out. Next up, we have one that I know that everybody I know who's read it has loved it, and it is The Night Circus. It is about the jacket copy says it's about dueling magicians, which they are, but it's like it's weird. Okay, so there are these two like older gentlemen musicians who are dueling, who don't like each other. But instead of like dueling each other directly, they each acquire like progeny and the progeny duel. But the dueling is really cool because there's this circus, the Night Circus, and they each have to like one up each other in the different like tents and displays that they create. So within that, a lot of the chapters are almost just kind of like not like standalones, but they're almost like short stories or short vignettes because it's like these core characters going into these different tents or seeing these different shows or meeting these different circus acts that all revolve around this really kind of ethereal, beautiful, emotionally based magic. So there were some parts of this that I didn't absolutely love. Like I don't really like the dueling magicians construct thing, but the center focus of this, the circus itself it's absolutely phenomenally gorgeous. Then we have, this is one of like the super popular ones that I was talking about that I'm going to recommend anyway, and it's The Hero of the Ages by Brandon Sanderson. This is the third book in the Mistborn series, so telling you things about it like isn't really something I feel comfortable doing because I don't want to spoil anything. But suffice to say, this is one of the best, third book conclusion. Oh, I just like smacked myself in the face with it. This is one of the best third book conclusions to a series that I have ever read. It handles things so well and weaves together the threads in ways that are both familiar and really surprising at the same time that I just really, like, I liked the first book. I felt the second book kind of slogged, but the third book knocked it out of the park for me. And while I don't often say this, this is one of those series that I would say is worth reading the first two just to get to the third one. Definitely highly recommend. It's probably the best Sanderson that I've ever read, and I'm working my way through a good chunk of his writing. And then lastly, we have a book that you've already seen me talk about and rave about. It is still so far my favorite read of 2016, and that is The Lies of Locomora by Scott Lynch. This book, I was thinking about this book in the car the other day, and I can still remember the names of almost every character we meet in this book. And that is kind of a rarity for me because I forget, like, because I read like decently quickly and I read like decently in volume. Sometimes I can lose some of the details after I read a book, especially if I just kind of like felt okay about it or it was like whatever. But this one has stuck with me so hard. It's such a gut punch. It is so beautifully written, and the magic system and the fantasy in it is so subtle but also so pervasive that I just feel like every person, like I just want to shove this book into every person's face and be like, have you read this book? If not, you need to stop what you're doing in your life for the next like 48 hours and go power through it and read it because it is absolutely amazing. I'm so excited to get to the next one, Red Seas Under Red Skies. I have it up there on my shelf. But yes, this is, I think, so far one of the kind of like blow me away fantasies that I've read in a long time. So yeah, those are my recommendations for fantasy that I think you should definitely check out. Fantasy that will enrich your life. Fantasy that is beautiful and complex and sometimes dark. Let me know down below if you've read any of these, what you think. If you do a BookTube SFF Babbles video, please link it in the Goodreads group that I will link down below, as well as you can put it in the comments and I will make sure to go check them out. I love seeing these videos from you guys. Last week's, I got so many new channel recommendations to watch that I'm very excited to see what titles you guys have to recommend. So as always, you can comment, like, subscribe, check me out on Instagram, Twitter, all over the internet, and I will check you guys later. Have